All right, welcome to episode 40 of the At Bat podcast presented by WARR Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am joined by my co-host Miles Porter, as well as my work colleagues Gabe Wilkins, who you can see on WARR's Open Run, the Open Run podcast. In the latest episode, you guys recap the All-Star weekend that left a lot to be desired, and we also have Chris Pennant, who you can see on his own podcast with James K. A lot is going on with the Sky, with the SkyHook podcast and, that 14 trade involving Marina Mabry. So I know you guys got plenty to talk about there. So definitely check that out, the SkyHook podcast. But I am Saul Rodriguez. How we doing, everybody? Is everybody doing okay? How we doing, Miles?
Doing good. New job, new role at my
Yes, sir.
Kellogg. Very, very thankful for this opportunity to get promoted to such a cool opportunity. It's very busy. I'm still in my work clothes as we're recording this episode. As I'm getting onboarded, I'm looking through a bunch of stats for the Cubs and White Sox, looking at the rosters and everything. And doing good. Excited for the season. Excited to see the fellas again, and ready to get it going.
Yes, sir. How we doing, Gabe?
I can't complain, man. I'm doing good, man. Just got at the house. Had a long day, hectic day, dealing with cable providers and all that. But outside of that, I'm doing good. I can't complain.
And you, Chris, how we doing, man?
Man, you see, my guy Sheffield Wednesday, top of League One, and I know we're not talking about football, but we're talking about some football.
I can appreciate that.
So that means that one of my teams is solid. That's what that means.
It's all good, Chris. I mean, look, I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, so it's like it's regardless of where we're at, and like it may sound like compared to Sheffield and all that, like it's still misery to be like have
still
hope.
Tough.
And then get smacked, so it is what it is. But it's all good though, because spring is here, and that's I keep telling everyone, spring is here. Baseball's, like when it comes to baseball, not the weather, obviously in Chicago, but I always love this time of year. It's like you feel baseball coming. It's like one of my favorite things is just like watching. I'll watch an obscene amount of MLB Network, where they have like the interviews and all that stuff going on and whatever. But I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on spring baseball. But like when does it first hit you, with a baseball? I know it's the World Baseball Classic coming up. Maybe that'll, not that it's like the World Cup here, but like when does baseball kind of hit you? You're like, oh, it's here. I know, Miles, for you, you've played it, so for you, spring baseball is different. But from a fan perspective, like when do you kind of have that feeling that baseball's here?
Oh gosh, I think for me, when it's just like you see like the different videos of the players, reporting to spring training, you see all the footage and stuff. And like you said, just when you're there, for me, when I played at Oakton and when we played against the Phillies, we would scrimmage them and, just see all this young talent, just the camaraderie of what comes with spring training. It's just that anticipation of the season is so, it feels so good. And that's how you know it's there, when you see all the players starting to check in and just the crack of the bat, the pop of the mid, it's go time.
Yes, sir. What about you guys? What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite part about it is it represents a new start. It's a new year. And when you got a new start in a new year, you got a new opportunity. You got a new opportunity to rewrite past years and past situations. And it's the one time of the year where everybody can have not just some sense of hope, rather, but a sense of optimism, a sense of excitement, and being ready to just put the work in. And like Miles was saying, when you see guys reporting to camp and you hear the sound of the bats, the pop of the glove, that's when you know what time it is. And this is really where the road and the journey towards a championship starts at. You gotta, like they say, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And this is what it's all about.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, once I see those videos of like, where the pitchers are taking their their first throws, or like they got those cameras behind the catchers, and you're just like, the view is like, that's awesome. It's like, it's time. What about you, Chris?
For me, it was always I said that when pitchers and catchers reported, I was putting away my winter coat. Like I wasn't caring about what the weather report said. I just wasn't gonna do it. I would layer up, but I was like, winter is over that day. It's funny, and I think we're gonna get into some of that later in the show. My consternation with my squad, I didn't even know the day. Like I've been checked out on spring training to some degree, because I've been worried about other things that they're doing and dealing with. So it's been kind of tough, but I felt that spring in the air. It's definitely when you see there's still some part of me that looks and checks the ballparks, the fields when I'm going by them on the bus or on a bike or something. And when I see the grass coming up and you can see those little tufts of green grass start to poke through, that's when you really know that spring is hitting.
That is true. That is true. And I mean, yeah, with the White Sox, we'll start with the White Sox. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to talk about there. I mean, with Cubs and White Sox reporting for camp and games, starting in a couple days. I know I saw the White Sox start on Saturday versus the Padres. So just get your guys' overall thoughts. We'll start with you, Chris, and with just in general, what are your overall thoughts with the team reporting? And of course, we talked about it before we came on too, the Tim Anderson interview that came out, recording this on Thursday. But Tim Anderson had an interview with Chuck Garfien, and there was there's a lot to unpack there, where he kind of I guess you could say responded to a lot of the stuff that Chuck Garfien said, throughout last season, kind of said all this stuff about the media. And also just overall thoughts on the Sox. I mean, some of the things that have happened, they added Brian Shaw, the veteran. They re-signed Elvis Andrews recently. So yeah, Chris, so give us your top thoughts from Sox camp so far.
It's interesting. It's not unforeseen that Tim, in a clubhouse that's really looking for a voice after the departure of Jose Abreu, would speak his mind. We know Tim Anderson to speak his mind in the past, and coming off of an incredibly disappointing season, I'm sure that he's not the only one who feels that way about how things went down last year. There's some parts of it that aren't unwarranted. There was only so much that guys could do. Luis Robert Jr. was hurt. Eloy was hurt. There were a lot of people. I think honestly, when you're talking about lost time, people were questioning the training staff and the conditioning methods more so than the players, unless it was Yoan Moncada, because everybody seems to have a hard on for underselling Yoan. Really, meatballs they do not like Yoan. I fuck with Yoan. Meatballs don't. That's beside the point. I think the problem is that even with everything that was coming down from the front office to the managerial issues, trickle down to the players. I get that, but even as bad as it is, when you're dealing with stuff like that, you're still expected to perform. It would go the same at any workplace. They'll give you some. There's going to be some leeway now that people understand that humans go through what they go through. But the Sox underperformed last year, and there were times like that game that they gave away in Colorado when Kendall Graveman walked the bases loaded. That was the most upset that I felt with this team in a long time, and I put that on the players because you got to get results at a certain point in time. Even if you have somebody hamstringing you, you still expected to get results. And I think for the talent that team had, there was a good amount. There was a certain amount of blame that you could place on them. At a certain point, you just have to do better than they did. I think that was the deal with Tim's interview. That I can understand people had their backlash for it, and again, I put a lot of blame, 80 to 85% of blame, on management. When I was at the ballpark and I was pissed at management. When I was bitching to my girlfriend about this team not making the playoffs, it was about management. When I was bitching to people about the Mike Clevenger deal, none of the players said, hey, let's bring in Mike Clevenger. That was management. So I understand how but you have to understand, I think, from his perspective, that people are upset at things that are out of your control, but they still want to see you as the team do well, and that's going to inform some of their criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what about you, Gabe? What are your thoughts overall?
Overall, as far as camp is concerned, I like what I'm seeing. I like that I'm seeing defensive drills being worked on under Pedro Gaffal. That's something that I didn't see with a Tony La Russa-led ball club. And I was surprised not to see that, considering how many years of experience that the Hall of Fame manager had in the game, despite his age. But nonetheless, you're seeing that. You're seeing attention to detail when it comes to situational hitting. You've actually heard managers and people in the coaching staff, on the coaching staff rather, discussing that. You heard about how Oscar Colas came in with a no BS agenda, just ready to get to work each and every day. I also like the signing of Elvis Andrus, or the re-signing of Elvis Andrus, who re-signed for 1 year, $3 million. I like that because it gives them a veteran who knows what it takes, to play not only on a contender, but each and every day. And to have him at second base alongside a TA is short. I'm interested to see how that double play pairing works out as well. But I've heard nothing but high praises from the young players such as Romy Gonzalez about Elvis Andrus, who is really in competition to back him up at second base and is a utility guy. And for him to, have high praises for a vet like EA's caliber, it says a lot. As far as the comments that TA made, my main takeaway from it is that he understands that the team didn't live up to expectations, didn't live up to the bill, and he takes responsibility for that. But at the same time, breaking down to members of the media such as Chuck Garfien, as well as the fans, that, hey, we're human as well. I understand the fans' frustration with management. I've had some frustration of my own with management. It's a lot of moves that I feel like Rick Hahn could have made and should have made for the White Sox in the effort to where this division wasn't so questionable each and every year as to who will it be that takes it. But nonetheless, here we are, discussing things. And when I look at the Tim Anderson situation, all I took from it is he said, hey, I'm human. And for every fan that was frustrated with the management and in the front office, they were also frustrated with players. I went to a few games last year, over 20 might I add. And for every time I would hear something about management, I was hearing things about TA. And yet TA over the last 3 years, if we really gonna be real, has been one of the most consistent players in the lineup when healthy, who tries to play each and every day. And unfortunately, after he reached his second consecutive All-Star game, within a month after doing so, he got hurt with the finger injury. It could have came back, but by the time he was trying to come back, it was too late, and the division was already out of reach. And yeah, it was a lot of factors at play because of that, because of injury, because of effort, because of guys being told not to hustle, and that getting leaked to the media. It was no accountability whatsoever being asked of guys to uphold in that locker room. And I think that starts at the top with the manager. But then again, when you have differences in opinion between ownership and the front office, how can you ever expect for the two sides, let alone the team, to be on a united front? Now it appears as if everyone's on the same page. How will it work? It remains to be seen. But one thing I do like about this group is that they seem hell-bent on wanting to, fall out and not just prove everybody wrong, but make some folks shut up. And I'm for that, especially when you go on Twitter and you see a lot of people talking about what happened last year, what moves they like, what moves they don't like, the fact that the team isn't being projected to win the division in most analytical eyes or experts and eyes and whatnot. Like you see that, and now it's just time to go to work. And the sooner they could go to work, the better I think everybody will be for it. And I'm just eager to see this team get to it, because they sure as hell got a lot to prove. But I understand what TA was saying. And one thing I want to point out to fans is I understand your frustration, but you don't own these guys either. And some of these guys like to talk about certain things involving TA's personal life, which I won't disclose on here out of respect to him. But I get it, but at the same time, we all go through shit. That's all I'm saying.
There's difference between. I'm sorry, Miles. I apologize. There's a difference between going through shit and doing things to yourself. Like, my man had ample chances to not do those things, to not step out, and he did. My man even had the ample chance to do that and not be caught on videotape doing it, and then he did it. So I forgot. I appreciate you bringing that up because I forgot to talk about that. And for somebody who loves Tim Anderson as much as I do, I was extremely disappointed in that. If there's more to it, come out and say, hey, man, there's more to it. Say we got an agreement. Say we have a non-monogamous thing. Say anything that gives people something to at least say, okay. But there's certain things that once they come out, they can't be private anymore, and you can't expect people not to weigh opinion on you for it. I'm sure that didn't help his season, but he could have avoided it. He could have avoided that. He
I'm
had
not
done a
saying that he
really
couldn't
nice
have,
job
Chris.
of avoiding it for
I'm
for
not.
three
I'm not
seasons.
saying. I'm not saying that he could have, Chris. But at the same time, the way I look at it is this: no one is perfect. I understand. I understand he opened himself up to it. I get that. But at the same time, no one is perfect. We all make mistakes. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're gonna judge me for my play on the field, fine. But as far as my personal life go, like at some point I am gonna speak out on that. And I can understand why he didn't speak out on that during the season. Because in some aspects to me, that ain't everybody's business. That's just my opinion. And I understand he wasn't in the right for that. I don't condone that myself personally. But when I'm talking about Tim Anderson, I'm talking about Tim Anderson, a baseball player. Let's get that straight, just so we clear. But I understand how you feel. I understand how the fans feel. But like, let's keep it all subjected to the baseball shit. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm asking. Let's just keep it subjective solely to baseball. Because when I watch Tim Anderson, I go to watch him play baseball. I'm not watching him to evaluate his relationship with his marriage with Bria and how he manages as a family man. I hope that work out for him. I pray that work out for him. But at the end of the day, I'm here to talk baseball. And I think that's all that TA wants to talk about. But you know what? TA said it best, in my opinion, at the end, where he just said, I'm just gonna shut up. Because he shouldn't say nothing at this point. But if he wants to, do you. As long as he performing on the field, that's all that matters. Because his objective is to win games. And I've never heard a teammate say nothing bad about TA. But for some odd reason, you got a fan base that's divided over him. And it's something about playing in Chicago where it's like, as a black athlete, it's like, what do you want me to do? Because it's like you can't please nobody here.
I'm happy that Tim's play on the field. Don't step out on your girl. That's all I'm saying.
And I
And if you're gonna
respect that.
do it, don't let your side girl catch you on tape.
You're right. You're right. And it should be a warning to the younger athletes. You're right. It's a warning. Don't get caught on tape. But he did. Yeah. What can he do about it? Hey, all he can do is just learn from it and grow from it.
That's fair.
You know, one thing about being an athlete and having fame, nobody asks for it. It just comes to you. And some people know how to deal with it better than others. Some have to learn on the fly.
I think I was very surprised. That's all. I'll leave it at that. I was surprised and I was disappointed about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yeah, I get where you guys are coming from for sure. I mean, that's, you know, I definitely forgot about that situation. Now that I think about it, from like so much is going on with the White Sox, you know, that's one of the situations that happened. But I will say, from what Tim Anderson was saying, the one thing I will say at least is what I kind of said before we came on is I understand where the players are coming from, where, you know, some reporters, you know, just kind of outlandish, mindlessly saying stuff, but at the end of the day, they still got to do their job and still got to talk about what you're doing, whether it be negative or positive. I get the whole, you don't want to be bashed. I understand. And I'm not saying to bash players, but when at the end of the day, when the player, I believe it looks like Chuck Garfine's a fan to me of the Sox. Am I wrong? I don't know if I'm wrong on that, but
no, he's a fan.
Yeah. So exactly.
Fan.
So it's just, I think it was a little bit of the frustration. So, but I get both sides. I think Chuck Garfine should have a little bit of leeway. I think Tim Anderson should be able to say whatever he wants. So, but I did like that he, at least the honesty there. But I want to go with you, Miles. Like, what are your overall thoughts on the Sox situation, and even on Tim Anderson's situation as well, but just overall on the White Sox camp right now?
Yeah, so I think just because I think nothing but great points have been made. I think the White Sox are kind of at a point right now. Do your best to keep it on baseball. This is a team that we're talking about that has gone through a lot of trauma. Like Tim Anderson is one story. We haven't even talked about Clevenger as well. And I think just with the overall past history, what's going on with, LaRusso the past 2 seasons and them not living up to expectations and so many different factors that this White Sox team has been dealing with, I'm hoping for the sake of the players that they are able to come together this spring and prepare to go into a very demanding 2023 season. Sox cannot get bounced this year. They can't. I think they lost a couple of pieces. I think they lost a big piece with Jose Abreu. I still believe that they're a very solid team. I still believe that they're going to compete for the Central 100%. I'm hoping it's just someone who just, aside from the Cubs and White Sox thing, this is as a Chicago fan, as a baseball fan, as someone who still really cares about the White Sox, regardless of who my teams are. I want to see this team succeed. I'm hoping that everything going forward is just baseball related. Now, some of these guys have kind of set themselves up and where it's kind of hard for it to just be baseball related. But, fresh season starting this weekend, like we all talked about. I'm hoping as soon as that first spring training comes around, boom, it's go time. Hey, let's get it going. But there's so much. I don't want to say there's so much at stake. I really don't want to say that. I don't like thinking absolutes like that. We're talking about a team that is put together so well, and kind of like what Gabe was talking about. White Sox fans are extremely pissed off with this team right now, with the management. So I'm hoping that they're able to come together, kind of resolve all these issues outside of this, behind the scenes, put some things aside and be able to perform. And it's also up to them. You got to make smart decisions out off the field because, unfortunately, as a professional, what you do outside is going to impact what you do on the inside. It sucks. It sucks. That's just the way it is. So I'm hoping for the White Sox sake, for the players and the fan base, you guys just have one hell of a season. That's what I'm hoping. I'm rooting for the White Sox on the north side, regardless. I'm hoping that it's just baseball going forward, and this team puts it together. Despite the craziness going on, I think the White Sox are put together pretty good going into this season. I have a lot of confidence in them, so I'm hoping that it's just limit the outside stuff. And I kind of talked about this with you, Saul, last year with the Mets. Limit that drama because it really hinders the season. The Mets had almost zero drama last year. We saw the success that they had. I want to see the White Sox ball out. I really do. So I'm hoping that all this is resolved at least by opening day. Spring training, you got all kinds of movement going around. But by opening day, I'm hoping that all of this is just Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Limit the drama, and not only limit the drama, but watch the baseball games, actually. Because I know a lot of fans that was at baseball games last year, I won't say no names, who, like they hung on the score of the game so much to where they wasn't even watching like the situational hit or the lack thereof. Like I saw fans talk about, this bullpen blows. The White Sox bullpen last year was actually keeping you in games if you was watching. It was failure to score runs with the bases loaded and less than 1 out or less than 2 outs or whatever like that. And not having knowledge of situational hit, trying to swing for the fences when a simple, slap, up the middle could have drove in a couple runs or whatever here and there. So just keeping it baseball related, man. And I understand, the off the field drama needs to be avoided. And that's where veteran leadership come in. And hopefully Tim has learned enough from his experiences to tell these young guys, hey, don't do what I did. And let's keep everything on the field. And let's do what we do and win games. Because the best success is revenge. There's nothing more that I would love more as a Sox fan to see this team up 10 games by the All-Star break where fans are just quiet as hell and they don't have nothing else to talk about but baseball.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And I mean, there's plenty. And yeah, I know where you're coming from, Gabe, too, in that perspective. Like, online, you just see so many people, and yeah, I mean, you guys say it all the time. Like Chris said, meatballs, definitely a meatball take all the time. You just see people spew stuff that like, oh, this guy sucks or this guy's trash. Like, especially with Moncada, right? It's like the talent is there, and people always want to say like, oh, he's lazy, this, but it's like you don't know what the dude does behind closed doors. Like, you don't know what type of work he puts in. So yeah, there's plenty of that to go around, and especially in a city like Chicago with so many sports teams, and even like and you guys can attest with basketball too, is like it's ridiculous. So, but going on the north side of Chicago, I mean, there's definitely not as much in that perspective, but there's at least more, at least there's I feel like there's like blind optimism, like we're just like going in like, hey, if hopefully we can win some games, somehow scare some teams in the playoffs or like make it to the playoffs. I don't think so, but
Cody
we'll see,
Bellinger is
right?
going to change the Cubs.
If you guys look, well, I will say this. What made me more optimistic was when I interviewed Andrew Zimmel. He's the media director for IG3. We were talking about it a couple episodes ago, but this guy was hype. He's more hype for the Cubs, and he's not even a Cubs fan. He's a Twins fan. So I was like, he got me hyped, but he was saying that he got more. He said the biggest signing for the Cubs in the offseason was Cody Bellinger. And yeah, he said that. So look, I hope that Cody Bellinger. I just don't think that's gonna happen. Honestly, like I hope I'm wrong there. I just don't think it's gonna happen. I think he will play elite defense, and that's the one thing I think that's gonna be fine, and I think we'll be okay. But other than that, we'll start with you, Miles. What has been your overall thoughts on the Cubs camp? I mean, there's been a lot of positive talk. It's Marcus Stroman out here saying they can win the division. I think he might have said they will win the division, something like that. And I like that confidence. Marcus Stroman is a very outspoken guy. I just saw an interview I saw an interview he had as well with NBC Sports. So just overall thoughts on Cubs camp and how do you think this team is shaping up? I know with Kyle Hendricks as well. There's a spot open in the rotation to start the season with Wes Nesky, Keegan Thompson. Those are candidates for that. So yeah, just give me your thoughts overall.
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to point out that Marcus Stroman, he pitches in a do-rag sometimes. So I love that. That's just his Black History Month, and I like that a lot. I just want to point that out, that I think that's gangster. I like that. You gotta put some color on the Cubs. That's beyond the point. So what I think I think going into the season, the Cubs are a much better team than they were last year. And I think that's where so much of this optimism comes from. You do look at these pickups from Dansby Swanson to Cody Bellinger, Trey Mancini. There's a lot to desire here. Jamison Tyone, I forgot to mention him, and other names that have been brought onto this ball club. We are a much better team than we were last year. Now, with that being said, I still think you need to see the product work. You got to see how are these guys going to perform. How is Ian Happ going to hit? How is Seiya Suzuki? How is David Ross going to construct this lineup? How is Cody Bellinger going to hit at Wrigley Field in April when it's super cold? And we know that he struggled in the past and he hasn't had much time playing. It's different playing at Wrigley Field and in the Midwest in general during April. It kind of shows what kind of hitter you are in that sense. So I feel good about this team. I'm very confident in them. Now, do I think we're going to be better than the Cardinals? No. Do I think we're going to give the Cardinals kind of a run for their money? Yes, but I also believe that Wilson Contreras is going to come to Wrigley Field and kick our asses. That's what I believe as well. I think that's really going to come back to bite us. I think Wilson is kind of playing with an unknown chip on his shoulder that he hasn't really voiced too much. With the Cardinals being such a pivotal point of the Cubs season and vice versa, we're going to see how we're going to match up against them. I think that's a very talented team. I think that's a very deep lineup. They play with a lot of energy. Their pitching, in my opinion, okay. We'll see each year. I don't think they have elite pitching, but they have a lot of good experienced pitchers. They have a lot of pitchers that can go deep into ball games. I think the Cubs are going to be a very fun team to watch. They got to stay healthy. We cannot play down to certain teams that come to Wrigley. If it's someone like the Reds that's coming to Wrigley or vice versa, we take care of that business. We move on to the next series. I like this new format of playing every team in the MLB at least once. I love the Cubs' chances. I really do. And I like where we are pitching-wise. I like Dansby Swanson. We're going to see what happens with Patrick Wisdom. I think he's on his way out. But that depends on Bellinger and Mancini. There's so many different pieces. The Cubs have a lot of good problems to have. Now, we performed this year. We see what we got to work on going into going into even next year. But Cubs fans should feel good about this team this year, now that it's got to put it together on the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to be optimistic for sure, but I'm just like, man, don't get too carried away, right? Some of the fans out here, but it is what it is, and I think like some of the additions they made have been pretty. I've liked a lot. And some of the more that aren't talked a lot about is like the Brad Boxberger move, Michael Fulmer, like additions to the bullpen. That's already being added to guys like Keegan Thompson, who's probably going to be who's probably going to be a long reliever in there. Edward Alzolay, who's also going to be a long reliever in there. Brandon Hughes, who looked pretty good last year too. So yeah, there's a lot to go around as well. There's a lot. It's a great, I think, a year that we're gonna find out a lot about the future team, right? About the next playoff team for the Cubs. I think we're gonna find out a lot this year. Especially I like the lineup as well with like Trey Mancini in there. Like, it's looking like he's gonna bat like sixth, and I think it's pretty good for our lineup, right? Having some thump around the whole lineup and having Christopher Morel, bat, later on in the lineup too. So it's a very flexible lineup. It's a very interesting lineup. Plenty of stuff can happen. But I'm definitely, I'm keeping it in check for sure. My hopes in check. But we'll start with you, Gabe. What are your overall thoughts on the Cubs and just this overall optimistic they have in camp so far this year?
Well, I mean, if no one else has hope in them, they have to have hope. Being the
That's true.
guys in the locker room, right? I mean, otherwise, what you going to spring training for? Why are you getting ready for an 162 game grind? But when I look at the NL Central, yes, I do believe that the Cardinals are the favorite. I do believe that the Brewers are not too far behind them, but we know that the Brewers can be shaky sometimes and inconsistent. So you can make a push if you get off to a hot start. I like what they've done though with their pitching rotation, especially in their bullpen, as you all were talking about the additions that they made with Boxberger, Azalai, and then even some of their young pitchers who showed a lot of promise last year, like Wozniacki. He's a hell of a pitcher. They have some young guys that are hungry. If they can get a lot out of these veterans that they have bought low on to have some career years, and they actually put some wins together, I wouldn't be shocked to see them in the hunt for a wild card. Do I believe that's going to happen? No, but I'm not saying that it can't. I'm not saying that it can't. And I can understand why some people are excited over the signing of Bellinger, who is on a 1-year prove-it deal and knows that he has to play his behind off to get a bigger contract, which he wanted over the last, several months or so, but was unable to get. Dansby Swanson is a reason to be excited as well. Can he become the face of the franchise for a team that desperately needs one with guys who starred on the 2016 World Series team all out of town, with the exception of Hendricks? So remains to be seen. But I'm intrigued with what they're doing over there. And they got some young pieces who I haven't even brought up yet, such as Matt Mervis. Where does he fit on this team? Because at some point he's gonna get his number called. And I still believe that they have a hole at first base that needs to be filled. Can he do that? And will he be able to do that depending on how the season goes? Only time will tell. But there's some reason to be optimistic somewhat for the Cubs. But I would say fans should be cautiously optimistic and just be excited to go to the ballpark and watch a young team that is at least going to compete, which we know that they can do because of the way in which they closed out the season, holding their own actually against the creme de la creme in the NL and the National League East, knocking off teams like the Mets and the Phillies, and even snapping some big time win streaks against Atlanta. So it's a team that should make for an interesting watch.
Yeah, no, and you're right, in that sense, and just with the way that they're set up and all that, they definitely can make a run, for sure. But yeah, no, and as you were saying with how they finished last season, I think that's probably one of the main reasons, right, to be optimistic for this year. I think, and I think they could definitely do that this year, and especially I think I think it might even it might help a lot of teams to play against higher competition every year, whether it be the Yankees, right, whether it be the other the Blue Jays, right, every season. So that I think might help them out in the sense of like it might rev their engine up a little more and kind of hype them up. So that could also help. But Chris, what are your overall thoughts as well on the situation with the Chicago Cubs right now?
Honestly, I think we have the thing where the if you're looking from the outside in, at a team that you don't follow or support as closely, you can be a little more objective. I feel like Cubs fans, after the way that management hornswoggled them a couple years ago, saying that they were low on cash and whatnot, they should feel a lot better than they did back then. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think optimism is the way to go here. Again, that's for me on the outside perspective, but like you said, Bellinger's going to have to play his ass off, and if he doesn't, then you drop $12 million, and in today's parlance, that's not a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Tucker Barnhart's going to hold the fort for a year, maybe two, and that's not bad. It's a solid defensive catcher, if I remember correctly. Mancini, I think Northsiders, I think honestly, any team that if you have anybody who doesn't like Trey Mancini, there's something wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
So Cubs fans should enjoy Trey Mancini. Even if he's hitting kind of mid, I doubt that he will. But either way, he's a guy that I think is going to be a solid person just to have on the ball club. The Swanson signing, I said a couple podcasts ago, that's a good, solid signing, and it's now up to him to see if he can be the guy to step up and be a Freddie Freeman type, lead a franchise into their next generation. So I don't think that I can't see this team losing like 90 plus games. I could see them like 75 and 86, but that's not bad. That's not bad. I know that you're only 7 seasons removed from a World Series, and so it's different than it was before. I get that. Once you win the big
Cubs fans do not want to hear that number.
The expectations are higher. I get it.
God dang it, 75 wins. What the?
It's funny Chris saying that they're gonna win 75 games because I got fan graphs up on my second computer right now, and they're projecting the Cubs to finish the 2023 season with a 75 and 87 record.
And I don't even look at fan graphs.
Right.
Oh,
I'm
just gonna eat my goldfish.
I am the new Miss Cleo, man, right here. But no, like that's a quality team. It feels kind of like where the White Sox were in 2018, where I felt like direction was good and there was hope on the horizon. And so I trusted the moves being made when Ryan Cordell was out there. I knew he wasn't going to be out there forever. So there's guys who are on the way, and there are pieces available to pick up in free agency or via trade if you want to. So I think they're trending in the right direction. And that's what's most important. So I think that's a good cause for optimism.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna say to kind of what Gabe was said because I lost my train of thought, but with the first base hole, right? I think that what they're trying to do, at least to what it looks like, is they're probably gonna do Wisdom, Hosmer, and Mancini at first base. Like they're just gonna revolving door with Wisdom, with Wisdom also at third base. So Wisdom's going to be playing first base, third base as well. But I do agree with Miles that Wisdom is probably on the way out. He's one of those guys that you kind of hope has a big first half. Unless the Cubs are competing, obviously they probably would keep him, right? But if he has a big first half or a solid first half, another team would love to have that power somewhere. So, but also, yeah, I like the flexibility of this team as well in the sense that there's a lot of positions that are open for, like you said, like a revolving door type thing, right? Like by committee. So that's what I like about this team is that there's a lot of possibilities in how the team can be set up and how the lineup can be set up. And I hope that, David Ross and all of them can do a great job with that. Did you have something to say though, Gabe, after Chris?
No, I'm just saying, like, they do it by committee, and I think you'll see a little bit of that done in catcher as well between Jan Gomes and Tucker Barnhart, 2 veteran catchers who are, solid defensive wise behind the plate and have great experience when it comes to managing starting rotations in this league. So that makes sense though when you consider where they're at, because they're trying to figure out who their main guys are, and who's really going to be key parts of their core from 2023 and beyond. Like, of course, Dan Swanson is going to be in that mix. You also know, or you hope to see that guys like Marcus Stroman is in that mix as well, Wisniewski. But like this team, when I look at it, I just see a team, honestly, that has some young talent, has some vets that's been there, done that before. But who is the guy? That's my question. And I think that's the question that we're going to be seeking to find an answer to over the next 6 to 8 months that helps, get things back on track for the team over on Clark and Addison.
Yeah. And when it comes to those guys, like, I hope things go well for guys like Bellinger, Mancini, but it's just like, the pessimistic pessimist in me, right, is just kind of like, I don't think it's gonna happen. But yeah, like it kind of like, like Chris said too, it's like it's just a drop in the bucket if things don't work out. So that's what I like about it. But definitely, hopefully things work out in that sense, and they're able to, surprise a lot of people. But I did want to move on. Want to get your guys, and I think we'll spend another episode where we kind of delve in a little more deeper into the World Baseball Classic as it gets closer and closer. But with the rosters out now, and kind of, a little more chatter, coming out, we know whether it be the U.S., is a favorite to take it all because that team is so stacked. Whether it be, Colombia, the underdog, like that type team, or even Israel, as they did last time around. So just kind of want to get you guys' overall thoughts on just the rosters. And like I said, we'll get into like who you guys think is gonna win and all that on another episode. But we'll start with you, Miles. Overall thoughts on the rosters when they came out, and just on Team Israel's roster, man. I mean, they got their team right there with Jock Peterson in there, So tell us a little bit about it, man.
Hey man, look, Team Israel's looking great. We're looking great over here. I got a lot of confidence in us. But I wouldn't. Unfortunately, I still wouldn't put us at like the top of any list for the most part. I respect the fact that we still have Ty Kelly playing on our team. I think that is incredible. But after a while, okay, that's okay. So I think, oh gosh, this doesn't sound very patriotic, but the U.S. is looking really good. Like, the U.S. put together a freaking squad, and I think there's definitely some of that pride there because for the most part, a lot of these players who have won it before, and especially with that last World Series World Baseball Classic, people want in on that. I really think the United States have a really well put together roster. I think Japan has a really well put together roster. Obviously, this isn't by any surprise. These are two areas of the world that strive in baseball that are very talented. And I look forward to seeing how things play out. I think Cuba also has a pretty solid roster as well. I think Puerto Rico, okay. I think they maybe have taken a little bit of a step back. I know Frankie Lindor is not on that roster, but we see Javi Baez on there. But there might be some question as to how he performs based off of his performance in last year. But the playoff atmosphere, the tournament atmosphere, brings something different out of you. You've seen a lot of players emerge through this amazing tournament that takes place. So I'm liking it. I'm liking it overall. Obviously, I'm rooting for Team Israel. I'll be there. I'll be in Miami cheering on Israel versus Nicaragua. Excited. I'll talk to my buddy Mitch Glaser as well, who has a big hand in all of that. So, unfortunately, I couldn't participate with them this year, but maybe down the line we'll see what happens. I'm feeling good. I'm excited. I love the World Baseball Classic. I think it is so cool. It's like an early playoff vibe. If you're bored during spring training, you know what I mean? Go ahead and watch the World Baseball Classic. You won't be bored. Every pitch matters. It's incredible. Yeah. So I think that's really cool. So I'm excited. I think the teams are pretty much well rounded, but it's just me trying to be patriotic. But the USA looks freaking stacked. So I don't know. That team looks good. But I'm rooting for Team Israel. So there you go.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'll tell you one thing. I'll definitely be cheering out for Israel. The World Baseball Classic seems like it's one of those tournaments where it's like, as much as I want like a team like the U.S. to win, or like even like Mexico, for example, like it's just like it's chill. Like it's not like the World Cup. Like I take that. Like Mexico loses, I'm like I'm in shambles for the rest of the day. So when it comes to this, it's more of like it's very laid back. I'm cheering for the U.S., Mexico, Israel now. So it's like anything can happen there, and especially you got Matt Mervis in there for Israel. Hopefully get some bombs going. You got Alex Dickerson, so they got better definitely. That they're better, I think, on paper than they were that year when they made a run. So they could surprise a lot of people. But yeah, no, the U.S. team is just so stacked. But it's one of those things where kind of hearing more and more. Again, maybe this is the pessimistic side of me. Just keep hearing more and more. What if like they just get like what if they don't play as well? Is basically what I'm trying to say. Like, right? Because people keep talking about it. And this is still spring training for a lot of these guys. You have teams like China, not China. I was thinking it was I think like Cuba, where like they've been playing for a while, right? Dominican Republic, they've had leagues going on. So those teams, they're already ready to play. So it's a wild thing that's going to go on. I think this probably might be and people have been saying, not just me, but I think it might be the best World Baseball Classic yet. And it's cool that I feel like it's getting better and better. And I think, more people are gonna fall in love with this as it happens. But we'll start with you, Gabe. Like, what are your blanket thoughts on this, overall thoughts on the World Baseball Classic?
Man, when I look at this Dominican Republic roster, woo,
Oh
the
man.
pitchers, you got the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner and Sandy Alcantara, and then you got the veteran Johnny Cueto, who is White Sox fans know last year with the year he gave him. He did
Mhm.
everything in some to try and help his team get a top of the AL Central in an effort that fell short, but has always been a quality starter when healthy.
Mhm.
And then you got Christian Javier. You talk about a three-man horse starting rotation. I don't know who their other two stars to be on the back end, but that's nice to have. And then you got Juan Soto and Eloy and Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield with Julio Rodriguez. Like that's an all-star team. I know that USA is loaded, but man, that's an interesting team. And you talk about Mexico. Mexico's a team that could be a dark horse. I mean, you
Yeah.
got good pitching over there with Urquidy and Urias, and then you have
Javier Assad in there.
Osai, then you got Verdugo over there. So that's a team that, and they've always been a
Yeah.
thorn to
Mhm.
the Americans. Like they have great success against Team USA. So that's a team that you have to watch out for as well. But I'm glad to see for an event that I haven't watched in a long time
Mhm.
that star players, are starting to participate more in it.
Mhm.
Because I believe if baseball uses this right, or Major League Baseball uses this event right, that it could be to their league what FIBA has been to the NBA.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's just a cool thing to see. And of course, I'll be interested in seeing guys on the White Sox playing in it, such as Luis Robert for Cuba, Yohan Moncada, as well as Lance Lynn, Kendall Graveman on Team USA and stuff like that. I know TA is going to be a part of Team USA as well, so that'll be cool to see it also. And I'm happy to see that you have guys from Chicago being in it, which I haven't seen this many guys be active in the World Baseball Classic from Chicago who play in Chicago since following the event from afar.
Yeah, no, and the Cubs actually have. I haven't seen how many White Sox have, but I know the Cubs have the second most in the World Baseball Classic behind, I think, the Phillies. I think have the most right now.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, that's the cool thing about it. But yeah, when it comes to, and I will say one more thing about Mexico too, is that with the pitching, you said I think it's probably the first time though that I see Mexico's pitching, and I'm like, yo, they got some dudes in there. I mean, you
They
got
do.
Taiwan Walker in there. They got
Yeah.
and then a bona fide ace in Julio Urias. So it's pretty cool to see that, and they're definitely gonna give the U.S. and just everyone else kind of a run for their money, but it's gonna be exciting. And with Cuba, when you said with Luis Robert Jr. not being on there, man, it's like I think it's the first, they said it's the first time in World Baseball Classic history that you have the guys that defected that are playing for them now. I know plenty of you guys I think might have said no. I think I heard somewhere they said that a lot of players didn't want to still represent their team, but you still got the guys that went to go out there and play, or going to go out there and play. I think it's pretty cool, especially because those nations are so passionate about the sport. And yeah, as you said, Gabe, you want, or I think a lot of what Major League Baseball wants this, to turn into. You just have to watch a little bit of the last tournament with Dominican Republic taking on the U.S. and Miami. I've never seen that stadium so electric. That was awesome, and seeing the U.S. was losing that. Like they were losing at one point in that game. When I think they might have lost that one. Is when Nelson Cruz hit that go ahead homer off
They lost the
Andrew
cold
Miller.
play game.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So like that's just the type of atmosphere that you hope most games are at. And actually, I have a friend who lives in Japan, and I've been trying to get him because he's a baseball. He likes baseball too, but not much so World Baseball Classic. But I'm trying to get him. I'm like, yo, he doesn't live too far from Tokyo. Hopefully, he can go to
Wow.
one of those to Japan, the Japan Korea game. So that'd be pretty cool. But Chris, what are your thoughts, man, on the World Baseball Classic as we near it?
I love it, man. Had
Mhm.
I not been laid off, I was buying a ticket to go. I wanted to go to Miami just
Mhm.
because, like exactly like you said, Deez and Mero, when they had the show on Vice, y'all know Mero, Joel Martinez was a
Mhm.
huge Dominican Republic guy. He reps Dominican Republic, and they took out a spot to show that exact home run, that play that you're talking about. And it's still on YouTube. It's one of the funniest, the most enjoyable parts of the show, that was fantastic. And just him going off about Nelson Cruz hitting that bomb out to left field at Lone Depot Park. And then they had Jose Reyes had the camera on in the locker room afterwards. And Tony Pena was in there getting it in. And he's like, my son Tony Pena, who has no knees left, is still out here is putting in work. And that's when, like, I'd seen games before, right? But I wanted to be part of that atmosphere. And watching sports around the world, you realize how buttoned up things can be in the United States and in like North America, Canada, US in general. But baseball in the Caribbean is something I've always wanted to see. And you get that atmosphere with this tournament. You're able to see that on terrestrial domestic television for at least some amount of time. And I think it's good for fans to realize that this sport is truly global in the way that I don't think you can really, you're getting it now that we get these players in Major League Baseball who are showing out and don't care. You get it now in the way that you didn't get it when we were growing up, when we were younger. But you get it now, and it's going to be on full display when this tournament comes up. Like that U.S. team that won, a lot of those guys, I feel like, would go through the season and they would have fun, but it would be like, they're going to say cut and dry media training answers and all that. They got on that tournament, they were hyped. They were hyped up. Adam Jones and them were hyped up.
Yeah.
Manny Machado and them were hyped up. I'm so glad that like Netherlands still has my man Vladimir Ballantyne still out here all these years. And that's the thing. You always get the favorite like people who you're like, man, I can't believe that dude is still playing. Mexico still got my man Oliver Perez still out here pitching somehow. Still probably
61.
He's gonna be getting it up to like 91 somehow. That's what he does.
It's movement, nothing but movement, dotting.
He still does it. And that's like even the coaching staff. You got Benji Gill, Jerry Manuel's on the U.S. coaching staff. Vinny Castillo is going to be out here.
Yes, sir.
And you got all these places of times when baseball was simpler, when you could fill up your head with stats and know everything about every player because you weren't worried about paying bills at the end of the month. There's so many cool things about this, and I'm so upset that I got laid off by the mortgage company whose name we will not speak, that I cannot go to Miami like I wanted to. Now, I will say this. For good reason, MLB was kind of fucky with the ticket because they knew that they were going to get a lot of people coming in from the Dominican Republic, from Puerto Rico for games in Miami. But don't make me try and get like a Marlins package or something like that just to get tickets to this. Please just if you want to put up Super Bowl prices for individual game tickets, do that. This is something I would actually pay that for. But don't try to get me to jump through some weird hoops and get some group package for a Marlins game that I won't be able to go to just to get a World Baseball Classic ticket. That's silly. And that doesn't make any sense. Like,
it makes me not want to get it.
They got to get that money.
But like this is what people bitch about when they're like MLB doesn't know how to market itself correctly.
Right?
Mike Trout is boring, but you can still put him on more stuff. Maybe you think people won't want to go see this, but don't make it hard for them to try and go to.
Yeah.
Just that.
Like that makes me not want to. That makes me not want to go. You tell me you want to give me Marlins tickets? Come on, I'm not.
Rose Park, Lone Depot Park.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but no, it kind of what you're talking about with like how certain teams get hyped. Like I can't wait to see a game where it's like Seiya Suzuki bat flipping to Cambodia, and then you got Paul Goldschmidt who hits a homer, and he's just like running around the bases, like just chilling. We
gotta get Paul Goldschmidt some. You know how everybody's saying that there's too much drugs in sports now. We got to get Paul Goldschmidt on something. Man. Get him a little bit more excited.
No, not the St. Louis Cardinals. I follow the St. Louis Cardinals. That's probably my most beloved National League team. Everybody on the Cardinals always is crystal clear.
Oh,
You know, that's
man.
everything featured in St. Louis.
You know, we talked about it the last show.
Crystal
Yeah.
clear.
Talking about those cats down there. Yadier, the Yadier retired now. It's over with. It's like everybody's just gonna be like, the 1984 workers going in, assembly line going out. Columbia, I will say Columbia is my underdog squad
Oh,
just
yeah.
because they got my man Joey Five Way, Joey Quince, Jose Quintana out there, and I
Yeah.
will always have a soft spot for them. They're gonna have some guys and
Yeah.
former White Sox farmhand Tito Polo, but they're gonna have some guys who I think will make some noise. There's the obvious Harold Ramirez, Oscar Mercado, who was such a revelation for Cleveland last year. Uh, I don't think they're gonna win their pool or they might not make it to the knockout stage, but they're gonna have some guys out there who do well, and I think there's gonna be some more unknown guys who people are looking at like at the end of the tournament they're gonna be clamoring like, yo, we need to sign this dude. We need to get
Mhm.
him on. We need to get him on the team.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about any tournament in any sport, right? It's like that you can have a guy from a smaller country or just a what less known country, and he goes on the big stage and goes off, and then he wants, get signed. It happens all the time in the World Cup, right? And it happens all that time. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool to see that, and hopefully that happens, especially with a lot of the players. You get to see it's like a showcase for a lot of these countries. So it's cool to see, and like I said, we'll get into it. We'll do a whole episode on and kind of like talk about who you guys think will come out of certain pools and all that, all those groups. But I think it's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bat Baseball Podcast, episode 40 of the At Bat Podcast. I want to thank Miles Porter for coming on, Gabe Wilkins. Of course, you can see him on the Open Run Podcast, and you could see as well Chris on the SkyHook Podcast with James K. So hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of the weekend. Hey, baseball starts this weekend, spring training ball. So let's go, So hopefully everyone enjoys that. Everyone takes it easy.